Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, can we rally round for the last session of the day? Please get seated. C'est toi qui démarres.
C'est moi, voilà, je pense, oui.
C'est bon.
Ma clé.
Are we set? Welcome to this exciting session. Exciting in that we are looking at the topic mainstreaming the transformative power of mobile technology. From most of what we have heard, mobile technology is one of the critical ICT technologies where we can say that Africa leapfrogged. And from what we heard in the morning and the statistics available, we note that around the year 1995, there were only about 600,000 people who had access to mobile technology in Africa. By the year 2005, the figure had jumped to over 85 million. And by last year, it was said that over 730 million Africans had access to mobile technology. So if there is a platform for delivering ICT, be it in health services, be it in education, be it in any promotional program in Africa, mobile is it. With this brief introduction, I welcome you to this afternoon session where we have 4 presenters, 5 presenters actually, and who will be taking about 10 to 12 minutes each for their presentation. Thank you.
Bonjour à tous, Ralph Ancry de Orange. Je vais continuer un peu dans la lancée de ce qu'a présenté M. Sylla sur la base en fait de collecte de données pour prouver que la collecte de données via mobile est importante, mais touche plusieurs thématiques, non seulement l'éducation, mais la collecte de données peut aussi être aussi sur les thématiques comme la santé, l'énergie, l'agriculture. Mais là, je vais vous donner un exemple de ce qu'on a fait aussi dans le cadre de l'éducation avec l'AUF, donc à Madagascar. Donc, ce partenariat a eu lieu avec copiloté donc par l'Agence universitaire de la francophonie, l'AUF, l'Institut national de formation pédagogique et Orange. Participe aux efforts internationaux en faveur d'une éducation de base de qualité pour tous et vise à améliorer les compétences des instituteurs en pédagogie dans l'enseignement du français et en français. Donc l'expérimentation mobile à Madagascar, comme je le disais, a eu comme partenaire l'AUF, Orange et Agence française de développement. Donc pour l'introduction, c'est donc du téléphone. Donc ce projet, fait partie de l'introduction du téléphone mobile dans le dispositif de formation des maîtres pour renforcer leur accompagnement pédagogique. Donc on a fait les tests sur la province d'Amoroni-Mania. Le dispositif de cette formation s'est effectué donc en 3 phases, 3 regroupements, où chaque enseignant était regroupé pour justement avoir une auto-formation tutorée. Il y avait en tout 458 enseignants, dont 22 tuteurs. Donc, lors de ces regroupements, il a été remis donc un kit pédagogique, des ressources écrites et audio, plus donc la formation d'utilisation du téléphone portable et l'initiation à l'informatique et Internet. Donc pour continuer, donc on a fait donc 3 phases et on a terminé par une évaluation que je vous décrirai un petit peu rapidement, les résultats qui a été fait en mai 2013. Donc l'AUF nous a contactés et nous a mis ses besoins, nous a demandé et fourni ses besoins. Donc les besoins de l'AUF et INFP, c'était le support ressources audio, renforcement de l'encadrement pédagogique et le paiement sécurisé. Donc pour répondre à ces besoins, Orange a proposé des services comme donc des téléphones mobiles avec les lecteurs MP3, chargeurs solaires, qui est important, puisque dans certaines zones, l'électricité n'était pas toujours présente, il n'y avait pas d'électricité, et distribution donc à tous les enseignants de ces mobiles. On leur a fourni également un service d'appel gratuit entre enseignants et tuteurs qui permettait justement de communiquer entre eux, de se communiquer entre eux. C'était donc un serveur vocal, donc un numéro vert qui permettait aux enseignants de déposer leurs questions et leurs interrogations sur le serveur, et l'AUF pouvait répondre par SMS donc à ses enseignants. Nous avons effectué aussi un service d'envoi de QCM et quelques pushs d'informations aux enseignants. Et donc, il y a une interface web pour administrer donc, tous ces services à disposition donc, de l'AUF et d'IFADEM. Et pour terminer, l'AUF nous a demandé donc, de procéder au règlement des perdièmes via notre service de paiement sur mobile qui s'appelle Orange Money, qui permettait justement de payer en toute sécurité les enseignants et leur éviter de se déplacer. Une fois par mois, il fallait qu'ils se déplacent en zone urbaine pour aller chercher leur salaire. Donc, nous avons, suite à ce programme, nous avons donc fait une évaluation du dispositif avec un protocole d'évaluation, recherche basée sur l'exploitation donc des données administratives, sur les caractéristiques des enseignants, donc charte d'usage avec leur accord, donner des comptes rendus d'appel. Donc nous avons, je vous expliquerai plus tard, donc grâce à ces comptes rendus d'appel, on a pu justement analyser les différents appels qui ont été effectués par les enseignants, les tuteurs. Nous avons placé dans chaque mobile, donc avec l'accord des enseignants, une sonde pour justement analyser l'usage de chaque mobile. Il y a eu donc des retours déclaratifs des enseignants en fin de parcours, donc par questionnaire, en partenariat avec l'Université de Mulhouse. Il y a eu un entretien qualitatif après les analyses quantitatives des CRA, donc des comptes rendus d'appel et questionnaires, en partenariat avec l'Université d'Antananarivo. Et donc, il y a eu, en fin de projet, un test théorique et pratique, donc à la fin, comme j'ai dit, de cette expérimentation. Donc, qui sont les enseignants? Il y a eu donc 458 enseignants du primaire qui ont suivi donc, la formation, dont 22 qui assuraient le rôle de tuteur. Tuteur très important sur justement l'aspect d'animation et de suivi de la formation des tuteurs, des maîtres. Pardon. Donc des enseignants âgés et peu formés, l'âge moyen de 52 ans, 8 sur 10 ont 50 ans et plus. 8 sur 10 ont une certification au plus de niveau fin de collège, BEPC, un quart non fonctionnaire, sans formation initiale pour l'enseignement, répartition hommes et femmes équilibrée à peu près. Donc la majorité était déjà familiarisée avec l'utilisation du mobile. Plus des 2 tiers disposent déjà d'un mobile ou en ont déjà possédé un. Les 3 quarts ne possédaient pas l'électricité. Donc c'était vraiment un gros challenge. D'ailleurs, à ce propos, en dehors de ce projet, on a testé un nouveau matériel qui permet justement d'étendre le réseau à ces zones qui n'avaient pas accès justement au réseau et à l'électricité. Et donc, il y avait vraiment des écarts importants entre les circonscriptions scolaires pour l'équipement mobile initial et l'accès à l'électricité. Donc là, on peut voir rapidement les couvertures de ces des écoles primaires, où tous n'étaient pas dans une zone couverte par les réseaux. Donc on voit bien les points. Donc là, on a effectué donc une évaluation de la volumétrie d'appels et des SMS. Donc on a pu justement analyser les usages, les appels et les envois des SMS. On a effectué également des analyses des questions, des QCM. Donc là, on a pu se rendre compte que pas mal d'enseignants ont répondu. Donc il y a eu un taux moyen donc sur les différentes thématiques qui variaient entre 33 et 40%. Et on a pu sortir les taux de bonnes réponses. Donc là, la participation des enseignants, on a pu aussi voir que 10% des participants à la formation n'ont pas participé à la campagne et que 31% font partie d'une assiduité forte en répondant à plus de 7 QCM sur 10. Bon, je vais passer rapidement. Donc là, effectivement, on reprenait que les gens, effectivement, les maîtres qui étaient insatisfaits, c'est eux qui, malheureusement, ne possédaient pas de couverture réseau. Bon, là, je vais passer plutôt les analyses. Là, on voit que... Là aussi, pour vous dire l'importance des rôles des tuteurs, on voit ces points bleus, c'est les comptes rendus d'appels effectués. Donc, plus les points sont gros, plus les appels sont intenses, parce que, justement, les tuteurs étaient présents au centre de ces points bleus. Donc, on voit l'interactivité entre les tuteurs et les enseignants. Donc, bon, là, j'ai déjà à peu près. Donc là, pour répondre l'analyse des sondes, interrogés lors du dernier regroupement déclaratif, 92% des enseignants déclarent utiliser leur mobile pour s'informer ou s'organiser. Donc, autour de la radio, des fonctions réveil, calculatrice et agenda. 65% déclaraient utiliser leur mobile pour se distraire. Donc, pour les utilisateurs du smartphone, l'analyse des données de sonde montre que le lecteur de musique et la radio, appareil photo, calculatrice et le dictaphone sont celles qui ont été le plus utilisées, expérimentées. Donc pour terminer rapidement, donc à la fin de ce programme, il y a eu un test théorique et ceux qui ont eu le plus de points, ce sont ceux qui ont participé le plus au QCM et au projet d'intercommunication. En parallèle, pour finir, besoin inattendu mais efficace, la distribution de lunettes pour les enseignants, qui était quand même qui était un plus. Donc rapidement, pour ce qu'il faut retenir pour un passage à l'échelle, c'est évaluation externe donc en cours. Si l'extension de l'initiative est recommandée, il faudra particulièrement veiller à évaluer les niveaux initiaux pour mesurer la valeur ajoutée de l'ensemble du dispositif, étendre à d'autres disciplines, renforcer la couverture réseau, ça c'était un gros problème, doter les enseignants uniquement de feature phone, donc ce n'est pas la peine d'avoir des smartphones ou autres, avec un chargeur solaire intégrant une batterie, renforcer la formation à l'usage du mobile, notamment SMS, plus écoute des fichiers sonores, et procéder à des rémédiations sur la base des usages. Baisser le nombre de vagues de regroupement, il y en avait pas mal, inciter les mini-regroupements avec les tuteurs, maintenir la possibilité d'appeler son tuteur et de communiquer entre pairs gratuitement, et maintenir les QCM pour justement évaluer les enseignants. Voilà. Ouais, j'ai fait le plus rapidement possible. Merci.
Merci, Monsieur Ralph, de Orange. I think this is an excellent presentation that demonstrates the AAA philosophy. Anybody, anytime, anywhere And in addition, it shows that access to electricity should not be a barrier. Plus, provision of audio for those who may be visually impaired. Thank you very much for this presentation. We now move to the next presenter, Monsieur Fengum Miao from UNESCO.
Thank you. Thank you, dear Chairman, and very good afternoon, everybody. I think most of us are a little bit tired after a very long day, but I think maybe it's the moment for us to wake up from a corner usually we ignore from our policy and from our work. It's for the women and the girls who are outside of the schools. Often our policy are not covering them. So this presentation is about how to use mobile phones to promote the literacy education for those women and girls that are not in the schools. So I will briefly introduce you to UNESCO's ICT education program, particularly our mobile learning projects, and then we will define the problem we are talking about and talk about what kind of case studies and solutions UNESCO have found out from our study. From UNESCO, we have been helping the member states to address the key ICT education policy issues that we summarize from our work globally. First of all, how to ensure the inclusive and equal access to ICT resources and also to the learning and empowerment opportunity. Secondly, how to build the capacity not only of the policymakers, but also teachers, individual students, but also the educational institutions. So we think the institutional capacity sometimes is more important than the capacity building for individuals. And the third one is how to promote the free sharing and creative reuse of the open educational resources. As mentioned earlier, UNESCO coined the term of OER. We have been promoting the adoption of OER for more than 1 decade, and we are still doing some project. The last one will be how to help the government to seize the opportunity enabled by the emerging technology and solutions, including one-to-one learning, ubiquitous and mobile learning opportunities. And we have been focusing on certain areas in our ICT education program, including the ICT education policy. As I mentioned earlier on the first day, we have been helping 40 governments to develop the ICT education policy directly. And secondly, we are working with ICT and ICT for teacher training. So as some other experts already present, UNESCO developed the ICT competency framework for teachers. Based on the ICT CFT, we have been working with the government to develop the ICT competency standard for teachers and also to build the institutional capacity of the teacher training college of different member states. And over these 3 or 4 years, UNESCO have been developing the mobile learning programs. And we, as I said earlier, we have been promoting the OER. We are recently helping some countries, including Kenya and Oman and Indonesia and Bahrain and the other countries to develop the OER policy as well. OER is not only to allow the teachers to freely share resources, but more importantly, they need to have kind of a legal arrangement and also have something like the technological open listening to the educational resources. We are helping the member states. The last one is the evaluation for ICT education. We have a different strategy, including the standard setting, capacity building, and foresight pilot test, and the knowledge sharing. Of course, the policy debate and the policy dialogue like this one. That's why UNESCO has been established this kind of high-level policy dialogue forum in Asia-Pacific and in Africa. I want to remind all the policymakers some trends or some new thinkings. We must plan the ICT education for the new PC era and also for the post-2015 education agenda. So we are evaluating the achievement of EFA But what's the new agenda after the EFA? And when the more and more mobile technology, mobile devices, and mobile broadband flush into the education system, how should we respond to these kinds of opportunities and challenges? We have some data. I don't want to read the data out, but you understand we are in the turning point. Maybe in the next 2 years, the landscape of the ICT in schools will change significantly. How to respond to this new trends? This why UNESCO launched the mobile learning programs. We have been contextualize different kind of mobile learning initiatives and policies from the government and also from the private sectors. We use these 2 dimensions, but at least personally, I use these 2 dimensions. First of all, we should look not only the resource-rich settings in the developed country and from the private sector, but also we shouldn't forget the resource-poor settings in Africa and in South Asia. And we also need to assess what are the motivation of the mobile learning program and policy. Some of them are very, very external driven. Some of them really are anchored into the internal motivation. So you can easily position different kind of initiative. For example, mobile phones for literacy, we believe is internally driven, maybe in the kind of resource poor setting, mobile in the emergency, including how to use mobile phone to collect data in the post-conflict and post-disaster setting. And of course, we have some advanced initiative from Singapore, from Korea, talking about smart schools, one-to-one pedagogy for students and smart schools. And we also talk about mobile for teachers, no matter you are in a resource poor or resource rich setting. And based on this kind of analysis, we have been, define the mobile learning and at the same time launch several mobile learning projects, including the mobile learning policy. We have developed the mobile learning policy guidelines for the governments. It has been published. And then we have been pilot testing, as Orange has done, the mobile technology for teachers' development in Nigeria, Senegal, Pakistan, and Mexico. We are doing a kind of a case study about mobile literacy for women and girls. I will present the result and the findings later. And we are launching a project on mobile phones for reading, particularly for the teenager who don't like reading, how to use a mobile phone to promote the reading. And also, we have been hosting the annual Mobile Learning Week. Next year, in February, will be 3rd year. You're welcome to this Mobile Learning Week 2014. It's very easy for you to search out the information. UNESCO Mobile Learning Week, you definitely will find it. And based on so many projects, we try to analyze what are the structure, what are the essential elements enabling effective mobile learning. So at least I found there's 3 pillars to build the mobile learning machine. Without any pillar, or you have one of the weak pillar, the mobile learning building shouldn't be solid. You cannot reach your expected result. Those 3 pillars are, in terms of the policy, you should have the open curriculum and assessment policy, including the OER policy. In terms of infrastructure, the enabler is the access to the mobile broadband, and for the pedagogy, you must think of the one-to-one pedagogy and open schooling. And then come to our topic today. We are talking about a kind of a pressing problem, the low literacy rate of women and girls. I have a video to show to you, but I want to reiterate that the literate is the gateway to any further learning and development opportunity. For those women and girls who don't have a literacy skill, they don't have any opportunity to use modern technology and to enjoy further learning and development opportunity. I want to just show a video, maybe click the video is more direct. Quickly give you a picture. Excuse me. We have some data about the illiteracy rate and the distribution by gender. So that's the numbers of the children outside of the schools, and we also have the number of the adult illiterate. You can see 2/3 of the illiterate adult are women and girls. So I don't want to show more of the video, but because we have limited time, let me go back to the presentation. Yes. Thank you. So to address this kind of pressing issue that I think the private sector may not be interested in, we have been conduct a case study about using mobile phones for literacy education with a specific focus on women and girls. And not only to do a case study, but we are also doing awareness raising regional seminar in Asia Pacific, Africa, and also in Latin America. So we collect 8 cases that are using mobile phones for literacy education and targeting women and girls. There's a limited number of this kind of initiative. Globally, we find about 9 to 10, and a couple of them are just starting. So we just document 8 of the cases. And we also summarize the lessons at a different level, at a micro level, meso level, and a macro level. And we summarize the key elements of the mobile phone literacy ecosystem, for example, how to assess the major barriers, how to target the issues underlying literacy education, including the relapse of literacy, and check the infrastructure and ICT preconditions, and develop a mobile solution, and how to sustain the mobile content delivery, and how to design the mobile pedagogy, and how to sensitize the policymakers and mobilize the local community. So we have collected a lot of experience. So those are the key policy recommendations from the report. The report is in the pipeline. This report will be published early of next year. And we summarize some policy recommendations. I don't want to read through all of them. And now we are moving to the phase 2 of this project. So for this purpose, we formulated some mobile learning literacy models based on the challenge the countries are facing. For example, the unavailability or unreliable electricity supply, the shortage of mother tongue literacy content, the content are irrelevant to women's life and job, no sustainable access to literacy content, and the time constraint of the female family women, and the literacy relapse after the short-term face-to-face literacy. So we think of the solution. We have been formulating some solution, and at the same time talking to some donors and partners. For example, Nokia. So we are signing some agreement with Nokia for those women and girls in Thailand through their community learning center. We want to promote the literacy for large scale of women and girls. It's not only 50 or 100 women. We want to target thousands of women. Maybe through after half a year or 1 year, we want to really provide them with some literacy education. And we are also talking to some government foundation. For example, Chinese government is setting up a foundation for the South Asia. And we're also talking with Samsung, Vodafone to try to launch some large-scale initiative to really to promote the literacy rate among the female adults. So, as I said earlier, we are calling for action, and we are calling for partnership. You're welcome to partner with UNESCO for this corner of the world that are ignored. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Miao from UNESCO. I think some of the key takeaways of this presentation include the role of UNESCO in policy advocacy, their role in promoting open educational resources, and their role in ensuring inclusiveness of a potentially marginalized group in benefiting from education, utilizing an ubiquitous tool. Of particular interest is a side reference to post-PC era. It's actually been predicted that in a few years' time, the survival of the PC will be questionable. We hope it will not be the typical Mark Twain kind of, the death of the PC has been highly exaggerated. But nonetheless, we are all getting prepared, and Africa is particularly well positioned, given the way we leapfrog, to take advantage of the post-PC era. Thank you once more for Mr. Miao of UNESCO. We'll now be listening to the presentation from Intel by Mr. Federico Cavalli.
Shall I use my own laptop? I don't know. If you could just check.
Okay. It's
So that I don't have
play two.
I'm sorry, I'm wasting time with setting up. But, you know, everybody's announcing the death of the PC, and we're still living with them for a few more years, I'm sure. I find it quite interesting, and, you know, working for Intel. I've been working for Intel for more than 14 years now. And I think the announcement of the death of the PC has been done before I actually joined Intel. And we still see that this year, more than 400 million, you know, desktop PCs and laptop PCs have been sold. And it's not, you know, expected to decrease anytime soon. They change shapes and forms, but not changing anytime soon. So the topic of this panel was mainstreaming the transformative power of mobile learning. And from an Intel perspective, and especially knowing that, you know, mobile phones would be, you know, the hot device from the other panelists, I decided to bring a slightly different approach. Mainstreaming for us means making it available to most people. And mobile learning does not necessarily mean having to use a very small screen to learn. And so what I'm bringing today is a slightly different perspective that I hope complements the ones brought by my fellow colleagues in the panel about some of the examples and the impact, the actual impact of the usage of mobile computers in education. So I don't think that I need to reinforce this. This has been said many times throughout the days, and I don't want to, you know, be another person repeating about the importance of quality education and how technology can play a role in that. I think that's clear for all of us. Out of this slide that I prepared a few days back, so I didn't know that all of this will be covered, I want to just highlight one aspect. I've been working in Africa for a number of years, and one of the issues that I found constantly in every single country that I get to work with is that learning is extremely dependent on teachers, and there's just not enough of them. So we have crowded classrooms when we have classrooms, and we have an enormous lack of teachers in those classrooms. So we end up with, you know, crowding kids. Just yesterday I was having a meeting with someone that was telling me that in some of their classrooms, a pretty large country in Africa, there's 100 kids per classroom. You know, how can you expect anything that resembles, you know, quality education when you have to scram that amount of kids in the classroom? One of the roles that we've seen that technology can really help is to help teachers facilitate learning, become coaches of learning on very large crowds. And we have a number of examples in which teachers can break classrooms in groups and have them interns using technology to learn as part of their learning experience. So quality education for us means being able to supplement teachers when we don't have enough teachers and definitely cannot produce enough teachers in the time we need, having the huge risk of losing a whole generation. There's still a lot of people without access to technology. And so we believe that initiatives like the ones that were already presented, and I'm sure the ones that are going to be presented, are extremely important because they leverage on technology that is available. And there's a lot of people without access to technology. For mainstreaming the transformative power of mobile technology, we believe that we need to take a broader approach. And I'm not going to repeat what's been said, but there's key things that are really important. It's not just about the technology, and it's not just about the devices. If we don't have the different elements of education transformation in place, and out of those, I think all of those have been mentioned. But I would just highlight the one that, for me, is really key, which is leadership. Big decisions come from the top. A lot of good initiatives come bottom up, but if you don't have clear leadership driving the whole country and rallying the country again, towards a common objective, it's really hard to make anything mainstream happen. And I understand that there might be arguments around the fact that, you know, mobile phones happen because people wanted the device to communicate, but if there was not a conducive environment for that to happen, we would still be you know, using smoke signs instead of mobile phones. So those technologies and those solutions that we can put in place for us, although they have an impact in the way that we teach and we learn, they also can and should have bigger impacts in the economy. And we should think about transforming not just education, but transforming the country as a whole from other aspects than not just education. And those two aspects that I think are really key is enhancing the social inclusion and having some impact in the economic development as you implement transformation in education. So the projects that I'm going to highlight, a lot of those were mentioned by John Davis this morning and yesterday, so I'm not going to repeat that. But I want just to break them down in the types of projects that we see and the types of impact that we see those projects having. The first thing is a lot of the projects, large projects with national impact and volumes that are, you know, probably providing reach to most students and most teachers in the country, usually start as accessibility programs. Accessibility meaning providing access to devices, providing access and connectivity. Sometimes there's not even a lot of thought put behind, you know, how that will eventually going to be used, how that's going to even be integrated in the classroom, and, you know, sometimes very far away from having any intention of educational change. And yesterday in the panel, you saw some examples of how technology integration can be done in very different ways. Well, these examples and the arrows kind of show you the stages, or at least the initial intention of the programs in the different countries. And I'm not going to repeat, you know, the fact that Macedonia was probably one of the first countries that we saw having a large deployment of technology for teachers and students in certain grades. Portugal followed a few years later. You know, all students, or 99% of the students in Portugal, have access to technology, and most of those actually use them in the classroom. There's a lot of integration already happening, and in some schools, already some educational change happening. And it's a long-term process. This project started 6-7 years ago, and only now we're starting to see that it's becoming normal to see technology being used in the classroom. It's only now that we see that teachers design their lesson plans from a pedagogical perspective to be able to leverage on the fact that each student actually has access to a device. So this takes time. It doesn't happen overnight, and we should not set our expectation that whatever we do should have an immediate consequence. And sometimes it's just you know, taking it step by step with clear intentions that we achieve somewhere, or we reach someplace. The other aspect is most of these programs actually had a very clear measurable economic impact. And that impact can be seen in direct job growth, so people that were hired for the deployment of these projects. These are usually long-term jobs because these programs run or get deployed over a number of years. We see a direct impact in the ICT industry, and these are, computer, tablet, device manufacturers. These are publishers and content providers. These are service and maintenance companies that will have to exist for the projects to be sustainable over time. And in some cases, and I would highlight here the case of Portugal, because it's probably one of the best examples in which a program that was, born or started in Portugal suddenly creates a whole industry that actually starts having impact on our GDP. The fact that the industry created in Portugal is actually exporting and selling to other countries with national projects is helping the growth, or the not larger decrease, sorry? 2 minutes, yeah, no problem. The larger decrease of our GDP. So, and to finish, all these projects, large-scale projects, require a comprehensive planning and execution. And so, obviously, I'll give you the slides if you want to read further, but it's really important to understand where we are and understand what resources we have available in the country. And if mobile phones is what we have available, then maybe that's what we need to start with. But I've seen that there's technology available at reasonable prices today. I've also seen a lot of statistics, and if you have any data that would contradict this, I would really be interested in, that the phone penetration in kids and teenagers, at least below teenagers, 13 minus, is relatively small, especially in the low-income groups. So trying to leverage on technology when the technology is just not there might be a little bit difficult. So assessing our ecosystem and understanding what we're dealing with is really important. And then doing a proper preparation, ensuring that we have the deployment for scale. It's not the same thing to do a project with 400 phones than it is to do with 1 million computers. The infrastructure that needs to be in place and the partners in place need to be totally different. And finally, make sure that whatever we do has a clear, sustainable plan in place. And one of the key aspects of that is ensuring that we have maintenance and support for the long term. And with that, I'm looking for a good discussion. Thank you.
Thank you for this excellent presentation, which started by reassuring us that ever since Intel won the battle of the processors over 30 years ago, Intel is not about dying, but will only step aside perhaps to higher-end devices. Again, we got another reassurance that MOOC or technology is not about replacing the teachers and the professors. This is of interest because already there is a movement by eminent professors against MOOC, even in the United States of America. But focusing on the key lessons of the presentation, we note that application of technology in education has clear-cut economic impact. May not be related to the statistics. It also drives for social inclusion, ensuring that the disadvantaged have equal access to education opportunity. And we also reassured that big initiatives require leadership, and technology improves quality in education. Thank you very much. Once more, the presenter from Intel. We now move to the next presentation on how Finnish teachers harness the potentials of mobile learning. This is quite interesting because Finland was the home of mobile technology when Nokia ruled the waves.
Et c'est parti. Mesdames et messieurs, bonjour. Je m'appelle Satu Järvinen et je suis extrêmement ravie d'être ici avec vous aujourd'hui pour partager un petit peu les expériences que nous avons eues en Finlande en travaillant avec les outils mobiles dans l'apprentissage. Je travaille tout simplement dans une école de formation professionnelle. Notre école s'appelle Omnia. Et à Omnia, je travaille dans notre groupe des solutions d'apprentissage. Et ce que nous faisons dans notre team, c'est de développer des nouvelles pédagogies innovantes sur l'exploitation des outils mobiles avec nos élèves. Pourquoi les outils mobiles? Pourquoi de la nouvelle technologie? Pourquoi tout? Tout simplement, c'est pour l'avenir. Nous vivons en 2013. Nous ne pouvons pas enseigner nos enfants et nos jeunes avec les méthodes de 1913. Mais nous devons utiliser les méthodes qui leur donnent toutes les compétences nécessaires pour qu'ils puissent avoir des vies et des carrières de travail les mieux possibles, pour leur donner les clés de réaliser tous leurs rêves. Alors, comment ça se fait en Finlande? Si je commence avec ce qu'on a appris en Finlande. Ce qu'on a appris en Finlande sur l'utilisation des TIC dans l'apprentissage en tout, c'est que si nous voulons renforcer les acquis réellement, vraiment, ça prend beaucoup de travail. Surtout, il faut avoir l'engagement des parties prenantes pour vraiment renouveler les structures d'éducation. Et aussi, également, nous devons donner de la formation pour nos formateurs sur les nouvelles pédagogies, sur la nouvelle approche dans l'apprentissage. Comment dire? Je trouve qu'aujourd'hui, nous vivons dans un moment historique. Aujourd'hui, c'est le temps quand on voit que l'apprentissage doit changer dans ce monde. La technologie, tous les TIC ont changé la façon de voir l'éducation. Et maintenant, nous qui sommes ici dans cette salle, nous avons la possibilité de vraiment de réimaginer l'éducation, de le faire de nouvelles façons et vraiment changer l'histoire. Trop de nos jours, on voit de l'éducation faite d'une façon vieille, ancienne. Mais maintenant, on a vraiment les possibilités de tout changer et faire des systèmes d'éducation qui plaisent aux jeunes, qui sont motivants et efficaces. En Finlande, on trouve que l'éducation doit plaire. Les cours doivent être motivants. Les jeunes ont beaucoup de choses à faire. On doit laisser du temps pour eux d'avoir des hobbies, de voir les amis bon, vraiment de se profiter d'être jeune et d'être vivant. Nous avons la Direction nationale finlandaise de l'enseignement qui dirige toute l'éducation en Finlande. Et eux, ils prennent l'utilisation des outils mobiles sérieusement. Si on dit si c'est un partie prenante, ils sont très engagés. Ils financent des projets de développement des pédagogies innovantes et ces projets sont faits par les écoles, par nous, tous les experts et les enseignants ensemble. Aussi, c'est eux qui nous donnent la possibilité de donner de la formation professionnelle pour nos professeurs. Ça aussi, c'est fait par des centres d'excellence de formation et nous, à Omnia, nous sommes très heureux d'être un de ces centres d'excellence de formation. La valeur ajoutée des TIC. Mais si nous regardons surtout à la formation professionnelle, nous ne pouvons pas avoir de la formation professionnelle qui donne les clés pour travailler dans le marché du travail si la formation prend place dans des bâtiments isolés du monde. La formation professionnelle et toute la formation doivent prendre place dans les environnements actuels, dans un environnement réel, dans le marché du travail. Et les TIC nous permettent un apprentissage de toujours, n'importe quand, n'importe où. Hors des bâtiments, hors des écoles, dans les environnements réels. Alors, qu'est-ce qu'on a appris? Nous devons en capaciter les étudiants. Quand nous regardons à l'apprentissage d'aujourd'hui, ce n'est pas une question des formateurs, c'est une question de nos jeunes, de nos enfants, et de leur donner tous les outils pour avoir les meilleures possibles vies. Et pour ça, il faut les en capaciter. Mais pour pouvoir le faire, nous devons avoir de la formation des formateurs et de la formation professionnelle pour nos formateurs. Aussi, pour donner ces compétences pour avoir les meilleures vies possibles, nous devons comprendre que toutes les formes d'apprentissage sont également importantes. L'apprentissage formel, l'apprentissage informel et l'apprentissage non formel. Et quand nous organisons l'apprentissage d'aujourd'hui et de demain, nous devons donner la possibilité pour nos élèves et pour nos étudiants de bénéficier de toutes les formes d'apprentissage. Nous ne devons pas seulement organiser de l'apprentissage formel, mais vraiment toutes les formes. Alors, je reviens. Les facteurs de succès. L'engagement des parties prenantes. Et vraiment l'engagement des parties prenantes. Ce qu'on fait souvent, ce qu'on fait avec nos écoles quand on travaille avec eux en Finlande, on commence avec la formation du management. Et parce que le management doit comprendre ce qui est l'apprentissage de demain, ce qu'on veut faire, comment l'éducation a changé et est en train de changer aujourd'hui partout dans le monde. Parce que c'est à part ça qu'ils peuvent renouveler les structures d'éducation et vraiment donner le support aux professeurs et les enseignants dans leur travail. Également, comme je dis, formation des formateurs. Les technologies sont rien si les formateurs ne comprennent pas les possibilités de la technologie et surtout les outils mobiles. Trop souvent, les écoles, les pays investissent beaucoup d'argent dans la technologie. Mais la technologie, sans la formation des formateurs, devient très vite un investissement perdu. Parce que les outils mobiles, surtout, nous donnent les possibilités de réaliser l'éducation d'une façon nouvelle. Ce n'est pas une question de substituer quelque chose qu'on a toujours fait avec les outils mobiles. Ça nous donne la possibilité d'avoir une éducation de demain et de le réaliser d'une façon nouvelle. Et pour ça, nous devons avoir de la formation des formateurs, sinon ça peut être un cas perdu. Mais si on fait tout ça, si on a l'engagement des parties prenantes, si on a les formateurs bien formatés qui savent ce qu'ils doivent faire, dans ce cas, nous pourrons vraiment renforcer nos acquis. Il va voir que je suis finlandaise. Alors, c'est très court, ces 10 minutes qu'on a ici, mais j'attends beaucoup de discuter avec vous, de partager plus en détail les expériences que nous avons eues en Finlande. Et je vous présente mon équipe chez nous en Finlande, à Omnia. On a pris une petite image pour vous pour dire bonjour, on est là. Et vraiment, j'aime bien de partager nos expériences et discuter en plus de détails de ce qu'on fait en Finlande, parce que c'est financé publiquement, on partage tout ce qu'on fait, tout simplement. Je vous remercie.
Merci, Madame Satou Javian, qui vient du pays de Nokia. Again, from the presentation, we see the recurring theme, AAA, and perhaps some new additions about the role of the youth and what the youth needs. Beyond training them, that they need more time for other social engagements. And in addition, that the training should be both formal and informal, and particularly informal training should not be done within the confines of the classroom. Thank you for this excellent presentation. And we move on to the last presentation, which was on the role of mobile phone technology in African higher education, from Mr. Kilemi Mwirira from Kenya.
Where do I find my? Can you please get it for me?
I have only a Word document.
Yeah, no, I have a PowerPoint.
I have only this.
Which one? No, there's a PowerPoint. I gave a PowerPoint this afternoon. It was copied by your friend. This one, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Good afternoon. My name is Kilemi Mwirira from Kenya. Let me first say that doing this presentation was actually an accident, because I had proposed that I do a presentation on e-learning and the quality of African education, but then Tarek told me all those slots had been taken, but there was one available in the mobile technology, just in case I'd like to give it a go. And I thought, why not take the opportunity to learn? And actually, you know, I realized that there's a great deal that we can accomplish using the mobile in the area of higher education, but making it very clear that they cannot be a supplement to traditional delivery systems. I think mobile, you know, learning and, you know, what it entails has already been explained. It's just that to say that there are many people who think that there is a great deal of potential in this area that is yet to be exploited. Certainly, it will probably work out the best in well-wired developed countries, but there are opportunities in Africa for a number of reasons. Firstly, the mobile telephone has transformed many aspects of Africa's economy, from business to banking to farming to entertainment and even politics. And therefore, you know, could we not see a role in education? It is also growing rapidly, like we were told by the moderator. Now more than 650 million Africans have access to telephones. And if you compare this to fixed line connections, you can see that there's a big difference. You know, by way of comparison, if you go back to the 1980s, in Kenya, for example, there were only 5 people with mobile telephones. One of them was the president, the other one was his friend. You know, it was really a status symbol. But if you look at it now, it's been so democratized that even a village, a very rural woman who has no basic literacy can use a mobile phone for talking and for other transactions. So it's a real revolution, and there is a real opportunity here. And the reason why would this technology be attractive for us in Africa? Very limited educational infrastructure, and this is also true of universities. Meanwhile, mobile technology is relatively affordable. And I remember, you know, the professor from Korea saying, maybe as we think about having no infrastructure, that we do not have to do the traditional infrastructure in the form of classrooms and, you know, and big physical buildings, and that we should begin to think of a different kind of classroom where we can use a different technology that will be quicker and cheaper. There's also a serious problem with fixed line internet, as we've been told throughout the week. While mobile technology is cheaper and available than broadcast media, and if you go to universities, virtually every student probably has 2 telephone sets. It can also provide a second chance to those who missed out on higher education in their youth, who are working populations, and those who can't attend physical classrooms. You know, think of the nomads and people that are constantly on the move. To what extent can they use that limited opportunity to access higher education? It can also support management of higher education institutions, you know, registration of students, maintenance of student records, writing of memos, timetables, because SMS messages are rarely missed. And it does allow for interaction with learners anytime, any place, as we've been told, and therefore gives an opportunity for richer experiences, because you can learn from what you are doing and wherever you are doing it. And there's a possibility of promoting collaborative learning where different people are reached by instructors at the same time. It's also convenient and interesting. You can use pictures, you can use videos, you can apply daily experiences and your own common thoughts and experiences. It's much, you know, it's a good compromise. As the advantage that audio text content could be transmitted better than through conventional approaches, as well as the ability to effectively, you know, you can transmit modules, quizzes, instructions, course offerings, examination results, and you can even give students ideas about career opportunities and employment. And it's well suited to learners who are in business and farming or other occupations, and can give them information on even what they do, and you can teach them through their own experiences in business or farming. In certain cases, it's also good, it can help in terms of promoting retention, that parents can reach their students and be able to send them some money, you know, through the telephone. They can communicate with them easily, and the instructors can also give them added support irrespective of where they are located, even if they're not be able to attend the physical university. It's a relatively cheaper way of accessing reading materials because you can download, especially if you have a connection. And there's a possibility of lecturers using bulk SMSs, and students can also download books if they cannot afford to buy them. And it's known to be the cheapest way of accessing the WW. Some challenges and implications. First, sorry. If you talk about, if you think about the mobile technology, again, it might sound utopian, but there are serious, problems. There are serious challenges that we have to confront. Firstly, most African governments and universities have not developed any policies on the use of technology. There is limited technical expertise, and the African content is lacking. There are issues about whether it's practical, whether it's usable, and whether it's the most cost-effective at the present time. And the cost of downloading materials can also be prohibitively expensive. Mobile coverage still remains poor, and there are lapses, even in places where you can easily access the mobile. And downloadable content is necessarily limited, as is the ability to read long content from small screens. Compared to the conventional students, learners who have only this as their only means of accessing material and teaching can be said to be disadvantaged because they don't have a whole range of options. And the biggest problem is accepting it. Even distance learning is still not easy to accept. Just think about parents and students accepting the fact that you can learn and get a university degree with the hand of a mobile telephone. In terms of the future, this can only be made better. I think the opportunities we have to think about is how we improve on this technology to benefit better students and more efficiently. Need for investments in infrastructure, subsidization of the technology so that more advanced versions are affordable, the smartphone that cannot be affordable by most students, teaching and management programs that are well designed that take account of learner interests, schedules, and their everyday activities, and are based on evidence that works or does not. An attempt is made to understand the technology's potential and challenges through a state-of-the-art review so that we can learn what works, what does not work, under what kinds of circumstances, and what is it that we can leverage. There is more interest in investing in research on the type of mobile technology that is best suited to Africa and local content, and the training of instructors and curriculum designers, need for training of students themselves on how to best use this technology. Try to take advantage of already existing facilities, computer laboratories in primary schools, digital villages and centers where learners could download heavy content and more easily and inexpensively. And make sure that basic learning materials are available to students as they start on the program, and that there is regular physical contact with the instructors, preferably every 3 months. Leverage commercial interests, Safaricom, equipment providers, Samsung, Intel, and others to reduce cost, and have incentive programs from government to make it possible for those kinds of partners to be interested in supporting the promotion of higher education through the mobile technology, and to ensure that there is a well-devised strategy for evaluating the quality and coverage of the teaching programs, and to standardize what is being taught so that students are not laughed about, they are not made fun of because they use mobile technology, that the degree they attain or the diploma is going to be seen to be as good as the one that is attained through a purely conventional institution. So finally, I'd just like to say that although this idea would work out the best in countries where technology is much more developed, I think no continent needs it much better than Africa. And as utopian as the idea may seem, I think it's a good dream. I think we need to begin to dream and to believe that it can be used. And it's a resource that is available easily and cheaply. And the most long-term investment remains empowering communities, empowering society, dealing with problems of poverty, improving governance, so that we have possibilities of many more people being able to afford the technology and to use it as a supplement to what else they have. I'd just like to stop here and say that I think I found it a challenge, to learn, and I hope that 10, 20 years from now, this dream that we were talking about how mobiles can help higher education in Africa will be realized. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kilemi Murara. Thank you for taking us through this journey on why, what, before we all start saying, Eureka, it's all done and all the problems of Africa have been solved. Thank you for putting before us some of the challenges involved and the direction for the future. We also appreciate you are reminding us what and why of mobile technology. And of course, as expected from someone from Kenya, reminding us of the opportunities of money transfer, Kenya being the home of M-Pesa. Without taking too much of your time, I think this is time to throw it to the floor. If you have comments, questions, additional insights to some of the presentations, you are welcome.
Bonsoir. Bonsoir. Je suis Antoine Mian, enseignant-chercheur à l'École normale supérieure. Je suis d'autant plus heureux, mais malheureusement, la plupart de nos ministères de l'éducation ne sont pas là. Parce que ce qui se passe dans nos écoles, c'est que les téléphones mobiles sont interdits dans nos écoles. Donc, dans nos écoles, aujourd'hui, les téléphones mobiles sont interdits. Et je suis heureux que cette conférence, ce forum, puisse mettre l'emphase sur les téléphones mobiles. J'ai eu toujours à le dire, et j'ai fait 2 études à l'ENS qui ont montré que aujourd'hui, le mobile peut être un palliatif ou bien un accompagnateur de l'intégration éthique dans l'éducation en Afrique. Pourquoi? La dernière étude que je suis en train de faire sur des enseignants, c'est-à-dire les professeurs des CAFOP, dans les CAFOP supérieurs de Côte d'Ivoire, a montré que le téléphone mobile et l'ordinateur peuvent être complémentaires. C'est-à-dire, quand l'enseignant ne peut pas avoir accès à l'ordinateur, ils utilisent le téléphone mobile pour s'appeler entre eux, pour échanger sur le contenu éducatif. Mais malheureusement, dans nos pays de l'Afrique de l'Ouest, dans les règlements intérieurs, il est interdit aux élèves d'utiliser le téléphone mobile au sein des établissements. Mais là, il n'y a pas 2 semaines, j'étais dans un lycée où j'ai demandé aux enseignants, mais comment vous faites? Ils m'ont dit que quand ils sont en train de faire les cours, derrière eux, les élèves utilisent le téléphone mobile. J'ai dit, mais puisque vous ne les mettez pas en travail avec l'outil, vous ne les occupez pas sainement avec l'outil, ils sont obligés de faire autre chose. Parce qu'en fait, le problème sur lequel nous sommes, c'est que si l'éducation en Afrique n'accepte pas le téléphone mobile, les enfants vont se faire un usage peut-être détourné de ce téléphone-là d'une mauvaise façon. On va arriver d'ici 2 ans à quelque chose qui sera simple. Aujourd'hui, quand nous voyons dans nos environnements, on a tout ce qui est transfert d'argent par téléphone mobile. Mais quand on fait ce transfert d'argent-là, puisqu'il n'y a pas trop de sécurisation, les enfants peuvent trafiquer ce transfert d'argent. Donc, il est aujourd'hui temps que nos ministères se rendent compte que l'intégration des TIC dans nos écoles passera forcément par le téléphone mobile. Parce que quand vous prenez un pays comme la Côte d'Ivoire, le taux de pénétration de l'ordinateur, c'est en dessous de 5%. Mais le taux de pénétration du téléphone mobile, c'est plus de 96%. Dans les villages les plus reculés, on a le téléphone mobile. Aujourd'hui, la plupart des enseignants, même des universités, ont accès à Internet à travers les clés mobiles, à travers leur smartphone. Pourquoi est-ce que alors nos ministères font de la résistance? On n'a pas les moyens de mettre les ordinateurs dans chaque classe, mais chaque enseignant, chaque parent d'élève a un téléphone mobile. Alors j'invite les ministères de l'éducation des pays africains à embrasser cet outil-là. Parce que c'est à l'école qu'on apprend les bons usages. Si on n'intègre pas le téléphone mobile à l'école pour apprendre les bons usages, on risque de faire, d'ici 2 ou 3 ans, une génération mutante. C'est-à-dire qu'il y a un usage vraiment de mauvaise qualité du téléphone mobile. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you to all the speakers for excellent and informative presentations. I have 2 points on the last presentation, the use of mobile technology in higher education. Kilemi has taken us through a series of options that are possible, and I just wanted to probably add one more. One of the challenges that many higher education institutions face now is really how to manage their records. Higher education institutions, public ones, really have poor record-keeping systems. And we do find that one of the ways that we can actually improve this is to try to introduce mobile technology so that they're able to harness some of the records that they keep. And we've particularly had experience in the Southern African region. So that is something also to consider. We had an innovative idea during the Idea Triennale of a young man from Kenya who was introducing the use of mobile technology to hire e-books, textbooks in e-form. And we thought that this was an idea that is worth exploring because, as you know, some of the textbooks in higher education institutions are quite expensive. So if we can have a software or a system which can enable someone to hire, a student to hire a book, and after reading it, return it to wherever it has been hired for a very low cost, that is something worth considering. But of course, we expect that publishers may have really a big fight on this. But these are some of the innovative ways that we could consider in the use of mobile technology. Thank you.
Thank you for the 2 interventions. Oh, I see another hand there.
Hello? Yes. I just would like clarification. A couple of the speakers, actually several of them, mentioned about having a mobile policy. And I just would like to clarify that, are we actually suggesting to ministers that they need a separate policy on the use of mobile phones? Or are we actually asking for the inclusion of the technology in their education policy?
Thank you. Thanks to the speakers for the various inputs. I think one of the recurring themes was that mobile is part of a broader solution. But I think it would be useful to reflect on a bit of our own experiences in South Africa around where mobile makes sense as part of a holistic solution. I think there are 4 areas where mobile has potential benefits as opposed to other things. The one is in terms of tutoring. There's a kind of a social media platform called Mixit in South Africa, and it's been used to provide online support to other students. So they call in, they get support either with information, etc. So that's a place where it can make sense. But how it gets integrated into the educational system is not something we've looked at because we're at the stage of piloting. The department I come from is the Department of Innovation or Science and Technology. The second area is peer-to-peer support. Because I think we're undervaluing the potential of children to learn from other children, or learners to learn from other learners. And this happens whether we like it or not, through established platforms or not. And it might help to establish that. The third power of mobile technologies is the one about enabling self-assessment. We have a big project with Nokia in South Africa called Dr. Mats and Mobile Mats, and the ability is it's a series of questions, and it's around facts, not complex concepts, where you're able to answer and you get back immediate feedback, and it allows you to self-assess and then empower you when you go back into the classroom. I think this is undervalued, especially where you have learners who struggle to provide, as I think the keynote speaker said, it's about self-confidence. If you build self-confidence, it's easier to learn. And part of self-confidence is not only being assessed when it's formal assessments in the classroom, but to self-assess so that you can pick up yourself. And then the final where we found, but not too much has been done around this, is to use subsidiary functions on a mobile device for training purposes. And that is, for example, the camera function. And this was something that the kids did, not designed by someone who was piloting an application, where they took photographs of a kind of amusement park and used that to calculate physical properties like, so they were able to use this or to share information. And that's where it comes in. So mobile, I agree with some of the speakers, is not a solution on its own. It's part of an overall solution, but things have matured, and what you need to figure out is where does certain technologies make sense. Even laptops, I agree, I think one of the, PCs, why we're calling the death of PCs, and there isn't a death in a sense, is because the whole peripherals around PCs are not equipped with laptops. Very difficult for me even to do a presentation with this, whereas it's easy on a PC. So unless the ecosystem is established, it's very difficult. So I think it should be open devices, and you need to mix and match devices as best as possible and mainstream it. Thanks.
Thank you for those very positive interventions from the floor. I believe one intervention was a direct question, the issue about mobile policy. That what are we asking the ministers of education to do? Are we asking them for a different policy on mobile phones, or are we asking that mobile policy should be integrated in ICT policies in education? The rest are essentially information, and I will ask each member of the panelists to take a go, one last word before our departure from each of the members of the panel, in which they also try to answer the question while putting in any last word they have, starting from my left. Mr.
Thank you for the follow. I would like to respond to Pauline's question about how to position the mobile learning policy into the educational development strategy or the overall ICT education policy. I have been traveling around the world to help to work together with the government to develop their ICT education policies. And UNESCO had been promoting OER policy and mobile learning policy at the same time. So the scenario we want the government to achieve is not that they have an educational development strategy, ICT education policy, and OER policy, and mobile learning policy separately. We're not talking about this kind of scenario. What we are helping or we're working together with the government to do is that we ask them to review their educational development strategy, particularly the strategic objective, and then look back to the potential of ICT, OER, and the mobile learning technology. And then they should contextualize different components into their education strategy. Sometimes they have a kind of, we call it because we also have research on the different formats that ICT education policy and OER policy and the mobile learning policy can take different formats. Usually, the countries, the advanced countries, for example, Singapore and Korea, develop a kind of self-systematic ICT education policy that can also be integrated into their overall educational strategy. So within the ICT education policy, they can have some policy argument about how to adopt OER, how to have a kind of permission to the students to use mobile technology, or we can call it the teacher-regulated applications of mobile phones in the school settings or in the classroom. So that's how we helping the government to position the mobile learning policy and the OER policy or the other kind of policy. And at the same time, the government need to decide what do they mean about by the mobile technology. Do they mean the mobile phones or mobile tablets?
they should define the mobile technology by themselves, and then they should decide to which part of their policy they should anchor the OER policy or mobile learning policy. So that's my response to your question.
I have a quick comment on this policy aspect. From our perspective, it's not about creating policies for each type of form factor that you find in the markets. The policies should be about the pedagogical approach, allowing pedagogical approaches that are including the usage of technology. And that can be many types of technology. I think the issue that we're facing is that we're stuck in a very rigid, very conventional pedagogical approach that has implications in the way that we develop the curricula, that with the curricula we develop the lesson plans, that we do assessment, and that we don't use technology in that whole process. So the policy should be more about rethinking how we teach and learn, and then provide guidelines, not policy, guidelines on how people should use technology in the classroom and outside of the classroom. And I think that will be of use for everybody. So not about creating a specific technology for every form factor.
I'd like to comment also on the policy issue. What we have in Finland is that well, it's about the big picture and the entire system, and that's why I wanted to emphasize, how important it is to have the key players really engaged in seeing education in a new way and restructuring education in a new way, so that you don't need to have, and you shouldn't need to have a policy for every single thing. And that's what we have in Finland. As a school, we get the core curriculums from our National Board of Education. That's the very core curriculum defining the learning goals. How we meet those goals is up to the schools. However, in order to support the use of technology and new services and really emphasize the change we want to have in education, the National Board of Education has given out an outline and guideline on the use of social media in classrooms and in school to support it and to enhance it. Also, they have defined the skills that the teachers should have with regards the use of ICT, mobile devices, and social media services and other cloud-based services. And that acts as a form through which we can then plan and offer professional development for teachers, because we can lean back on the National Board of Education's suggestions and say, hey guys, this is what you should know, this is how education is changing, go for it. When we started in our school in Omnia, we started by training our managers, and we had our students train our managers on the use of mobile devices and cloud-based solutions. And that was the way we got them to understand what the future of education is about. After that, we had all the supports in training our teachers and got them on board. We got lucky after that because the director of our schools went to be the deputy mayor of our city, and he's in charge of education. And what he did when he went there is that he sent the entire management of the city in charge of education to come and get training on how to use mobile devices in education. Now we're getting luckier because now our city is emphasizing a bring your own device policy to all the schools. Because coming back to the first comment, we too in Finland still have schools that ban the use of mobile devices and or telephones and schools. Those schools exist everywhere, even in Finland. This change that we're about to make in education, it takes a lot of work and it's slow. And that's why we need to work on it at all angles. Technology is not a solution in itself. Training teachers isn't enough, because you also need the support from the management and the structures that support the new ways of seeing education.
Yeah, thank you. I like to appreciate all the comments and I agree with most of them. There's no doubt that mobile technology as it is right now has much more usefulness when it comes to management, to doing the simple things that do not require a lot of complications in learning. So there is no doubt about that. Secondly, I accept the caution that this is not the solution. This is only part of the solution, and we can only use it as part of what is already available to see where it's strongest and where it can add the most value compared to what else is available. And thirdly, to say that for me and for us, it's just a challenge that we know there is potential, and there is great potential in Africa. The thing to do is to see how best we can exploit that potential through research, through checking what works out best, what doesn't work out. And going back to what Professor Peck Cho was saying in the morning, as we creatively, ask questions, can we also be creative in terms of coming up with a kind of infrastructure, that mobile telephone that is best suited to the African need, including this need, that we do not have to depend on Nokia and everybody else to be the ones to do to create that kind of mobile telephone that would be good for university teaching. And maybe this is where the African Development Bank takes the challenge. It's an African bank. These are African problems. You are the first ones to think about this. And I think it is useful to begin to now channel resources to ask these kinds of questions, not only in terms of the software, but also in terms of the infrastructure that can answer Africa's problems the most. And no better person, no one is better placed than an African and an African institution to come up with that solution.
If I may just make a quick comment. I thought we were just responding to the policy. There was a comment there about content and accessibility to content. So we've looked a lot at that issue, and one of the things that we realize is that there's a lot of quality content produced in Africa in each of the African countries for use of that African country, but it's extremely hard to find. There's not a single place to find it. So we took an initiative that is, in very early stages, but I would like to share with you, because you might be interested in having a look, to create a platform in which local publishers and content providers can offer their content, and a one-stop shop for learners to find that content categorized based on subject, grade, or interest area. So it's only available, it's just launched in November, so it's very, very green still, very in the beginning, and it's available in South Africa, Nigeria, and Kenya to start with. But it's the starting point to try to help solve that problem, because there was currently, that we knew of, no single platform where you could find the great content that exists together today in Africa. So I just want to mention that the name is Explore and Learn, so if you go to intel.com/explore and learn, you'll find it.
Just hijacked the microphone. UNESCO is promoting OER, which means we are encouraged and even push the government to put the educational resources developed by the public funds under open license that will allow the teachers to access free of charge and with complete freedom. So we have two free of charge and freedom of use and reuse and readapt. So that's the essence of the OER policy UNESCO has been promoting in the member states.
Thank you. Once more, we are being reassured by panelists that the mobile is not a replacement for the standard or orthodox approach to teaching or learning, but it's rather a complementary tool. I'm also reassured by panelists that several advanced countries do not even allow mobile in the classroom. So it plays a complementary role as a tool for accessing supplementary resources or for access to the collaborative space. But I suppose one of the panelists in his comments had thrown some challenge at African Development Bank, and it offers an opportunity to throw some light on the strategy of the bank. The African Development Bank has been involved in integrating ICT in education as far back as the year 2003, I believe, when the first pilot scheme was done with African Virtual University based in Kenya. We have since moved on from that to doing another program on how we can exploit the limited specialized skills in Africa by harnessing specialized interest in diverse universities in Africa to make courseware available to people anywhere they may be. And this is a new program coming under the Pan-African University Scheme, in which several African universities that are centers of excellence for various programs are being integrated in a network which will be open and accessible to all and sundry to exploit that limited expertise. Beyond that, as part of the new strategic plan of the bank, the 2013-2022 strategic plan, there is a concept we've called the New Model of Education for Africa, the NEMA project. And here we'll be partnering with several of the private people from private sector, the government sector, to deliver a new form of education that goes beyond the physical walls of the classroom, that will be delivering the kind of solutions we've heard today, anybody, anywhere, anytime. With this, I will say thank you for your attentive participation, and have a good evening, and we all endeavor to reassemble tomorrow morning. Thank you all.